Genesis 3. So to catch us up here, briefly, the man and the woman are in the garden. The woman isn't given a name yet. We'll get to her name at the end of today's notes. You have Adam and Eve in the garden. The woman's tempted by the serpent. She eats. She gets to Adam and he eats. They realize they're naked. What did they sew together? Fig leaves. Okay. Maybe we'll talk about fig leaves later. It's not a very good garment though. Okay, so then they hear God doing what? What do they hear God doing? Walking in the cool of the day. So this is the time of day before sunset. It also has something to do with that phrase, the phraseology there, with the cool of the day has something to do with like wind, the windy part of the day, which again, you have the relation, the spirit of God and the wind. I also told you this is anthropomorphization, making something non-human, giving it human qualities, God walking. Okay. There are other fathers of the church or others that would say like this was actually an appearance of what they call pre-incarnate Christ. Okay. Jesus before his incarnation walking, or an angel. But at any rate, God is walking. He says, where are you? They hide because they are naked and ashamed. So he says, who gave you to eat from the tree? Eve blames the serpent. Adam blames Eve. Eve blames the serpent. Okay, let's pick up at verse 14. The Lord God said to the serpent, because you have done this, cursed are you above all cattle and above all wild animals. Upon your belly you shall go, and dust you shall eat all the days of your life. This seems to be a very naturalistic kind of curse. This is what snakes do. They're on their belly. What does eating dust mean in this context? Just crawling through the dirt. Okay. You're cursed above all cattle because all of the animal, meaning you're cursed above these other animals because they can step on you. You're below them. Okay, they're going to want to kill you. We'll get to that in relation to humans. Okay, let's move to Genesis 3:15. This is very important. I gave this to you in your notes before. Genesis 3:15. What do we call that? Starts with a P.
Prophet.
P-R-O-T-O. Protoevangelium, which means the first gospel, or the first good news, evangelium, the good news. The first good news. Okay. We're going to look at this briefly, the Protoevangelium. Again, we talked about this before. So, Genesis 3:15, I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed, he shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel. So first of all, what does enmity mean? If two creatures have enmity, what does that mean? Yeah, they're enemies. If you have enmity, you're enemies. It's a kind of hatred. So I'm going to put this hatred between you and the woman, between the seed of the woman and you, etc. What is the literal, natural translation of this prophecy? The very natural definition is that there will be hostility between humans and snakes. That's pretty obvious. Some people like snakes, most people don't. Okay. And having snakes as pets is probably a relatively new thing in human history. Does anybody in here not have a fear of snakes? You know, if you do, it can be, for some people it's pretty bad. Like there are people that so dislike snakes, they don't even like to look at pictures of snakes or see snakes on TV. Okay. Even if you don't have a fear of snakes, what's the feeling you get? Let's say you're outside, you see a snake come, especially if it's a poisonous snake. It's like that feeling, okay? There's hostility between humans and snakes. And we don't have that problem around here. We have really like 2 varieties of poisonous snakes around here, and they're not usually a problem for us. But in some parts of the world, poisonous snakes are really a big problem. In Africa, you have the black mamba. In other places, you have cobras. And they not only are very poisonous, they like to come into your house and look for mice and stuff. So they're very deadly. And if you're in Africa and you see a mamba, they're going to immediately try to kill it. Okay. They'll spring into action and try to hit it with a stick. They're pretty good at it now. They'll hit it with a rock, stick, boom. Because they move lightning fast and they're deadly and they're aggressive. Okay. So again, on a literal level, you have this hostility between humans and snakes. But I don't think that's the fullness of what this is talking about. Okay, obviously. So what is the spiritual fulfillment? Okay, so first of all, you have three characters in Genesis 3:15. You have the woman, her seed, which I said before is odd because you don't usually speak about seed in relation to a woman. That's something you speak about in relation to a man. And who is the third character? The woman, her seed, and the what? Serpent. Okay, so you have these three characters: the woman, the seed, and the serpent. Now, for Christians, the reason we call this the first gospel, or the Protoevangelium, is you have the fulfillment of the woman in Mary, you have the fulfillment of her seed in Christ, Jesus, her son, and you have the fulfillment of the serpent is the devil, as we looked at before, the ancient serpent who was called the devil and Satan. This is the fulfillment. And this battle is played out over time and comes to a fruition in the life of Jesus Christ. So these are the characters, these are the people, these are the types, okay? When is this prophecy fulfilled? When does the seed of the woman crush the head of the serpent? According to our Christian tradition.
Like Jesus rises from the dead.
Well, it's actually both. Good. It's on the cross, and then it's completed. You actually hit on something there. It's not one. It's not really one. We say on the cross, but that's combined with his resurrection and ascension. We call that the Paschal mystery. But on the cross, and then with his resurrection, it's like finalized. You have the crushing of the head. Fulfilled on the cross there. A couple of things about, let me give you a couple of things about this. This kind of conflict. So we say that when we look at Genesis 3:15, there's not one fulfillment per se. The ultimate fulfillment we say would be the spiritual fulfillment, Mary Jesus defeating the devil. There's the literal natural fulfillment of humans and snakes. There's also the fulfillment of this seed can be singular or it can be plural, meaning all humans having enmity with the devil. Okay, I'm going to give you a word here. That means this kind of prophecy is polyvalent. Polyvalent, meaning it has different meanings, many different meanings. What you'll see as we go through, we'll get to these prophecies. I will give you the Christological or the fulfillment in relation to Christ, but that doesn't mean that's the only way it's fulfilled. By the way, we'll see this woman seed serpent thing is fulfilled, for instance, with King David as one example. There's also multiple instances throughout the Old Testament of holy, righteous women killing wicked kings or wicked generals, wicked men, by either crushing their head or cutting off their head, dropping a rock on their head. One woman hammers a tent peg, a nail through a man's head. We'll look at those different examples. He's sleeping. She puts a tent peg right through his temple. Another woman, the man's drunk and asleep, cuts his head off. Another woman, the man's going by, she takes a big stone out the window and drops it on his head. So you have this repeated theme of wicked, you can say the seed of the serpent, or wicked serpent-like men, kings, generals, evil men. And then you have not only the seed of the woman, but you have the woman crushing the head. You see it with Goliath. We'll get to that. David and Goliath, which most of you or all of you know the story of David and Goliath. He's a type of Christ. Goliath is even described as having armor that looks like scales, and there's other things we'll look at when we get there. And then how does David hits him with the stone? We'll get to that when we get there. And then what does he do to Goliath? Cuts his head off. Takes his sword, cuts his head off. By the way, he keeps that sword later, stores it, goes back later to get that sword, but he cuts his head off. So this thing is polyvalent. It keeps being, meaning with a lot of prophets, what you'll see is like it keeps being fulfilled. It finds its ultimate fulfillment in Christ. But this thing is even being fulfilled nowadays. Because the war, even though it's weird, the victory is won, but the battle still go on. We're assured of the ultimate victory. Okay. We can get an analogy with even human battles. So for instance, let's take World War II as a good analogy. At a certain point, World War II was just about wrapped up. Okay, on the European front, the Nazis were being put. You had the Russians coming, and the Americans advancing. They were being bombed. It was pretty much over. Does that mean all the fighting was done? No, you could still get killed. A bullet will still kill you, even if your enemy has signed a peace treaty. And just because someone signed a treaty or someone stops a ceasefire somewhere else doesn't mean that there's not fighting skirmishes going on. Okay, even especially in ancient battles. I mean, it took a while for news to reach like we're not supposed to be fighting anymore. They keep fighting, but that's the kind of way the enemy has been defeated. The victory is assured, but the battles still go on. You're still fighting this battle even till today, and you can insert yourself in here as a seed of the woman. Okay, that's the Protoevangelium. And you have the three characters: the woman, seed, and the serpent fulfilled ultimately in Mary, Christ, and the devil is the serpent. I'm not going to put this in your notes, but I will make a note. I will let you know. In some translations, so in this one, if you look at 3:15, it says, "He shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his, as he his." If you read the Douay Rheims, which is an older Catholic English translation, it was the one used at Mass in English-speaking countries up until the 70s. It's older. It's a little older than the King James Version. It says she, her. And in the Vulgate of St. Jerome, which is in Latin, it says ipsa. It means she, her. But if you go all the way back to the early Greek, it says he, him. The reason is in Hebrew, it's a little ambiguous. In Hebrew, it could be he, she, or it. What does that mean? Most modern translations say, he shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel. But you could put in she and her, still has the same meaning, because ultimately the seed wins the victory, but the woman gets victory through her seed as well. Okay, I even saw a translation recently that said "they," meaning them together. Okay, so they're all valid, especially the he, she, him. They're both valid. All right, any questions about the Protoevangelium? All right, let me keep moving. As I said, it's fulfilled ultimately on the cross. Oh, I will say this as well. I'm not going to put this in your notes, but in a lot of ancient cultures, you have this kind of motif. You'll see this with biblical stories. You have this echoing motif, the story of a woman, her son, who's like a demigod or half divine, and a serpent or dragon. For instance, one I looked at this morning was Hercules. Okay, the Greek myth of Hercules. Hercules has a human mother. Do you know who his father is? In the myth, Zeus. Means he's a demi, he's half god. He fights a lot of things, but one of them is the dragon. That's the constellation Draco. He kills the dragon. So you have this story all over of a woman, her son. What? There's the Hydra, which has multiple heads. Yeah. So you have the story of, and it kills him, strikes the head.
I just watched the Disney Plus version.
Oh yeah. So I forget his mother's name, something like that. But his father Zeus does all these things. But you go through all different cultures. You have this woman, her son, who's a hero or a demigod, and he kills a dragon or a serpent. This is repeated. One thing we would say as Christians is Well, this is because this is kind of baked into us as humans. Like this story is so primordial that it echoes throughout human cultures. Woman, her son, and the dragon, the serpent. The same thing with the story. When we get the story of Noah and the flood, there's flood stories all over the world, and they're very similar. I mean, there's different changes here and there, but one man and his family in a boat or in something like that being saved. You see that all over the place. All right, let me keep moving. As I said, it's polyvalent. It can have different things. You have the natural conflict. You have different forms of spiritual conflict, meaning all humans in the devil, Christ in the devil, or Mary in the devil. It's all true. All right, let's keep moving. Verse 16. If you look at Genesis 3:16, what is the curse? Now God is going into the curses now that the man and woman are going to get. He already cursed the serpent. What is the curse of the woman in Genesis 3:16? I will greatly multiply your pain in childbearing. So you have the first curse here is pain in childbearing. Okay, that's a curse. When we get to around later on, we'll talk about why the church fathers and others taught that Mary did not have any pain in her childbearing because she was free from this curse. We'll talk about that later. So, I mean, even nowadays, you give birth, I've seen it, that you can get an epidural and you can do other things that help, but it's a certain kind of traumatic experience. The joy that comes rushing in afterward, the joy that, of course, of the child is worth it, but it is. And nowadays, we don't have as many, but it wasn't uncommon for women to die in childbirth. If you begin to have bleeding or something else, it can be, it can be a traumatic experience. If you look at the latter part of verse 16, it says, "Yet your desire shall be for your husband, and he shall rule over you." What does that mean? The desire talks about sexual union because you're going to get pregnant. This is how you're going to procreate. Okay? He shall rule over you has different meanings, but one of these seems to be the natural physical differences between men and women. Men, on average, just tend to be larger, stronger, have more physical dominance. So that is the woman's curse: pain in childbearing, desire for a husband. Verse 17. What is the curse that God gives to Adam? And to Adam he said, "Because you have listened to the voice of your wife and have eaten of the tree of which I commanded you, you shall not eat of it. Cursed is the ground because of you, in toil you shall eat of it all the days of your life." So in verse 17, we get a couple of things. One, because of Adam's disobedience, the earth itself is cursed. Okay, we'll get to more, maybe a little bit more tomorrow, what I mean by that. It's cursed. The earth then begins to rebel against Adam. And because of this, Adam has to toil for food from the earth. Tomorrow, one of the things I'm going to give you are the gifts that the man and woman, that humans had before the fall. And one of these gifts has to do with harmony. They were in harmony with each other, they were in harmony with the animals, and they were in harmony with the earth. And most importantly, they were in harmony with God. Because the harmony with God was broken, the harmony with each other, with themselves, with the earth, with the animals was broken. So if you picture man and woman in the Garden of Eden, okay, it doesn't come right out and say so later, but they're not eating animals, they're not eating meat. They're eating what the earth gives them, and it's right there for them to pluck it, eat it. They don't have to do anything. They don't have to work. It's right there. They don't have to plant anything, pull any weeds. The food is given to them. Now it's not going to be the case. Okay, so now you're going to get your food from the earth, and you're going to have to work for it. So if you may have known this, or if you're making a garden, what do you have to do to the soil first before you
Till it.
plant? Till it. Good. If let's say I want to plant tomatoes, I can't just drop tomato seeds on the ground. What's going to happen? Nothing. Or they're going to get eaten. They're not going to do anything good. I have to till the soil. That's work. Put the seeds in there. Plant it. Now they start to grow. Do I just let it go? I mean, I could, but you're not going to do as well. I have to I have to get the weeds out. I have to fertilize if it needs fertilizer. What are some things that are out of my control as a farmer, as a gardener? How it grows, what kind of external elements I can't do anything about. Yeah, weather. I want the right depending on what I'm growing, I want the right combination of sunlight and rain. I don't want it to be too hot. I don't want it to be too cold. I can't control the bug. I mean, now we can. I can do these things to start to control, but even still, we were going into a drought. We've been getting a little bit of rain, but we had a dry summer. Okay. If you don't have the ability to irrigate or bring water there, your crops are going to die. They're going to wither. If you get too much rain, that's bad for them as well. Unless you're growing rice or something, but you don't want too much rain. If you have too many insects, they'll come and eat them. Okay. The earth is rebelling, and weeds will grow up and take the nutrients from your food. All these things are happening. Adam has to toil for his food. Verse 18. Thorns and thistles it shall bring forth to you, and you shall eat the plants of the field. Okay, it's not saying that there weren't such a thing as thorns and thistles, but something now about them that you're going to have to deal with them when you're trying to get food. Verse 19. What does it say about Adam in relationship to the dust? In the sweat of your face you shall eat bread, till you return to the ground. Meaning you're going to work, plant to get bread, to get the food from the ground. You're going to sweat for it. For out of the ground you were taken. You are dust, and to dust you shall return. What is that referring to? Well, good. So we commemorate this on Ash Wednesday. But for Adam and for us, what does that mean? What's going to happen to us? We're going to die. Yeah. It talks about death. Okay. Meaning, it says, Genesis 2, God formed man from the dust of the earth. And now you're going to go back to that state. Okay. What we're going to see a little bit today and then tomorrow is baked within this curse, so to speak, inside this curse is the means to help you. Because imagine if you were in a fallen state, but you lived forever. You would probably just keep multiplying your disobedience, and it would be difficult to get back to God. Remember, the whole goal is to return to Eden, to return to God. Okay? So what we'll see is that God ends up using death as the antidote in a way. We'll look at that. That's one of the themes. So dust to dust is death. Okay, as you said, on Ash Wednesday, we very literally get dust on our head. It's to remind us of our mortality. It's to remind us that we're going to die, that we need to repent and return to God, that we're destined to go into the earth. Okay, a few more things. Verse 20, what is the woman's name finally? Eve. And Eve means, if you read there, the mother of the living. Okay? In Hebrew, H-E-B is Hebrew. Her name is Hava. H-A-V-A, or sometimes you'll see it C-H-A-V-A-H. H-A-V-A-H, Hava. And Hava means to breathe or to give life. So you have Adam and you have Chava. Okay, the mother of the living. Verse 20, the man called his wife's name Eve, because she was mother of all the living. You notice here it's Adam that gives her that. Adam still has the power here to name. He gives her name. Okay. What we're going to close with today is verse 21. What does God give the man and the woman in verse 21? What does he clothe them with?
Garments of skin.
Good. We're going to talk about this today and then pick up on it tomorrow. These garments of skin.
I'm assuming it's like leather or something.
Yeah, so good. How do you get, so they're wearing fig leaves, picture that, that's not great. They're naked. Where do you get garments? So it's clothing. Where do you get it from? Animals. Do they just give it to you? What do you do to them? So this is the first instance in the Bible. Doesn't come out and say the animals were killed, but you have animal death. You have death in order to get these. So when it says in verse 21, the Lord God made for Adam and for his wife garments of skin and clothed them, the picture is as God killing them and taking them and putting them on there. Okay, there's a spiritual reason for that. But this could also mean that Adam and Eve had to kill animals and make clothing. So if you picture like sometimes we like cavemen, they're wearing like furs, picture that. So this is the beginning of wearing animals, animal death. Okay, so animals died in order for them to be clothed. But what I want to look at, and we're going to close on this, I'm going to give you two church fathers and their interpretations or what they have to say about these garments of skin, and then we'll close there. Tomorrow we'll pick back up on that. The first is Saint Ephrem. Saint Ephrem the Syrian lived in the 4th century. Saint Ephrem says about these garments of skin. Well, first he says Adam was clothed in a robe of glory. So Adam he shared something divine, like God-like, clothed in glory, and then Eve after him. Adam was clothed in a robe of glory, but he exchanged this robe for these garments of skin. Okay, he exchanged for the garments of skin. Saint Ephrem says that Jesus left the robe of glory in the waters of baptism. So Saint Ephrem says when Jesus went into the Jordan River and was baptized, spiritually he left his robe of glory in the water, so that all of us that go into the water, all of us that are baptized, we put that robe back on. So we don't have to wear the garments of skin in the same way anymore. We wear the robe of glory. Okay. The second church father I'm going to look at briefly here is Saint Gregory of Nyssa. And Saint Gregory of Nyssa says about these garments of skin that this is all that we have in common with the animals, and that it appears to be a curse, and it is listed, it's something related to the curses, but ultimately it is God's gift to bring us back. Okay, mortality and suffering, and this, it's God's gift so that man repents, doesn't become like a fallen angel that is immortal and has all this glory still and goes further from God. Okay, but this is ultimately God's gift to bring us back. So let's list a few things that we have in common with the animals. Okay, well, first of all, we just looked at sexual union. Okay, this is how we procreate. You have to have sexual union to have conception. Conception leads to childbearing, which was already painful. Okay, those are a couple big ones. Others, we have to eat food. Once we eat food, we have to just get rid of the food. That's excrement. You have to do that. You have to grow food. You will mature. So your body matures. Then at some point, you start to grow old. you're subject to disease, and then ultimately you die. There's death. Those are some things, okay? So if I ever ask you, like, what are some things that we have in common with the animals that St. Gregory of Nyssa talks about? Those are some of the things. It's not that these are all bad. His point is God gives these now to humble us, to show us the lowly state, but now we can use these things. We can live in these garments of skin in order to return to God until we retain that robe of glory. So it's not saying there were some who would say that Adam and Eve before this, they didn't really have bodies like we have. And that means they were given bodies and that the body is a curse. That's not what it is. They already had bodies. You will have your body forever. But the way that the body experiences pain, it has to eat, it has to sleep. Okay, the way that we conceive and give birth. These are parts of the garment of skin. Any questions there? What I'm going to do tomorrow is conclude Genesis chapter 3. Okay, we'll pick back up on the garments of skin, and then what happens to Adam and Eve? They are expelled from the garden and forbidden to return by a cherubim, an angelic being with a flaming sword. So we'll talk about that tomorrow.